I've got volunteers, y'all. Alright, so I was walking the garden and I came upon this tangle of tomatoes here, and I thought I should come talk to you guys about it. This here is a volunteer tomato plant, and it's growing out of a container right here, which I stuck on the ground early in spring when I had a tomato plant spring up in this container. Unfortunately, it had some disease on the leaves and all my other tomato plants looked fine. So I put it over here where I have a flower hedge. I just put it by the side and let it sit there. I didn't mean to leave it here, but I didn't want the disease to spread. And since I never took it away, it grew right through this container into the ground. It actually has 2 tomato plants on here, and a few weeks ago I noticed it was starting to ripen fruit. Now this here is a black cherry tomato, so the ripe tomatoes look like this, and this thing is covered in tomatoes. There are branches everywhere, so mostly have flowers out here, but then if you look closely you'll see tomatoes growing amongst the flowers, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. Most people can't see it, so if you're concerned about people, you know, why would you be concerned about people and what they think? But if you were, it's not very visible, but then you can actually get food off of it. And this other one here is growing orange tomatoes. Where's that orange tomato? So there you go. Not quite sure which variety this is, but it's a little tomato. It might be a sun gold, but not sure. So I have 2 different colors of tomatoes growing out here in my front yard. So I say, let the volunteers grow. And I'll walk you through the garden and we'll talk about volunteers. But if you have volunteer plants growing in your garden, you'll know that they are some of the strongest plants you could ever grow. Like, you could take your time and plant your tomatoes out and baby them and water and fertilize them, and they will just like die on you. Very rude. And then you'll see this little volunteer that sprung up in the compost or under some other tree somewhere, and you didn't even know it was there, never watered it, never fertilized it, never sprayed it with anything to keep it healthy, and it's growing crazy fruit for you. So they do tend to be stronger because they've had to suffer, they've had to live life, they've had to struggle to survive. All their lives they've had to fight. So I like to give volunteers a chance in the garden, and worst case scenario, you get nothing out of it, but best case scenario, you get a lot. I did have a volunteer sunflower here. It has since perished and gone the way of all the other sunflowers, but while it lived, it gave me pretty flowers to look at in my pepper aisle here. So I lost nothing from that. I gained beauty. That's what I gained. Let me show you. Oh, it's in the shadows, but I'll show you here a pepper plant that's growing in this abandoned container. Now my shadow's in the way, but see this pepper plant? I have no idea which pepper it is. It has this, the leaves look like a what's it called, ají limón, the leaves of that. And actually, you know what, it might be because the flowers, if you see these flowers, that's the capsicum. I can't remember. I'm going to put it on the screen, but they have these kind of flowers that are white with a little yellow on there. Yeah, so the same family where the ají limón and the ají amarillo, that's how their leaves look. But it just volunteered itself, and I said, sure, ma'am, you can do that. You can grow there, and there's not enough time in the season. I don't know that I will get much out of it, but it already has 1 pepper right here. See the pepper? So I'll get something, and I didn't have to do anything for this. I wasn't using the container anyway. So there's a win. Volunteer pepper plant. And speaking of volunteer ají limons, last year the only ají limon that I grew was a volunteer one, and it was fun Watching it grow, I had no idea what it was going to be, and I didn't have any other ají limons that survived the planting. That year they were all killed off by frost, and eventually it gave me these fruit. Like this is the ají limon, yellow. I was so ecstatic, and then I was able to save seeds to plant this year to grow this plant here. Okay, so volunteer, let them grow. This is another volunteer, see here? Right? Who doesn't want to go pick a yellow pepper and then look at the flower and just think, hello, how you doing this one? You okay? You having a good time in the garden? You are? Okay, mama. See? Isn't that reason enough to let your volunteers grow? Leave me a comment and let me know if you have volunteers growing in your garden. I'd like to know. Volunteer tales. Tell me about it. Now, not all volunteers should be let go in the garden, okay? So, if you're growing mint, I don't know why you're growing mint, but I'm just kidding. If you like mint, grow it. But if you're growing mint and it starts popping up everywhere, you probably want to fight that battle and try to keep it under control, because mint is a bully and will take over your garden. It's rude. It's aggressive. I think it's invasive. So, yeah, not all volunteers, but the things you actually like to eat or watch grow, let them grow. Let them grow. And this is the last of the marigolds in my garden. This is a chica flame marigold, and all the other marigolds have died off, and these two here are the only ones left, and they are volunteers. Actually, the flowers from the marigolds I had in my flower garden, the very first two that grew, my little son was so enamored with them, he picked them and gave them to me. I was sad because I used to come out every morning and look at them, and so I threw them in here. And wouldn't you know it, a couple weeks later I saw two plants growing in here. This is actually a fruit tree, and I was like, well, I'll just let you grow. You're not hurting anybody, you're just covering the soil, you're like mulch, it's okay. And she eventually started blooming, and now these are the only marigolds left in my garden. Let your volunteers grow. So glad we could talk about volunteers today, but if you'd like to see my garden when it looked better, in the peak of its glory, please click on this video. And until next time, may you always find joy in your garden and your life. Bye, garden friend.